Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Alba the Wildlife Adventure, and Cracklist. This is staying in. And so to answer the question, I got a Steam Deck.
Oh yes, the question hung over from the last episode.
Yes.
So if you're listening to Staying In as a box set,
Yeah.
this is not an unusual conversation to have. If you're binging us,
Yeah.
Welcome to hour 180.
Yeah.
which of course is the recommended way of ingesting. But if you are perhaps taking us at a more leisurely pace,
Yeah.
then what did we say at the end? So Pete, you got a special new thing or something?
It's my special new thing that I'm very excited about, basically. So yeah, I picked up a Steam Deck, and they are quite wonderful. They are really, really cool bits of kit. I'm finding it really fascinating to actually use, and it's so. I don't know if any of you were doing this back in the day, but did you ever play PC games like 15, 20, 25 years ago? Were you a PC game player, or did you mostly play on console?
Other than Football Manager,
Yeah.
I'd probably say no. Outside of like when I was very young, I remember having like a container just full of like jam-packed full of floppy disks of like random games like Cool Spot and James Pond and stuff like that. So that's that's my knowledge and my experience of the PC gaming world. I'm sure that's kind of all of it, yeah?
Yep.
James Pond and Football Manager.
I played Curse of Monkey Island.
Perfect.
I also had a copy of Grand Theft Auto that I've told the story before, that I never got really far into because I was so paranoid that my parents would catch me playing Grand Theft Auto that I uninstalled it after every time I played it. So I never got past like the first hour. Because I'd play it for an hour, uninstall it, then have to reinstall it again so they wouldn't find it.
Amazing.
You know, I should have really just created a folder for it called Homework and then put it in that folder.
Yep.
And they would have thought that I was being a nice boy.
Because you probably didn't play, you probably weren't around during the bad years, of which there were many on PC. I think you perhaps won't appreciate to the same extent that I have having a Steam Deck, which is everything just kind of works. And with PC games, that has not historically been my perception of what it's like to be a PC game player. And I think the convenience that Steam Deck offers of, right, there's 3 tiers of stuff. It's either Steam Deck verified, this is definitely going to work on your Steam Deck and you're going to have a brilliant experience. It's compatible. Yep, it will work, but you might have to do a little bit of finagling just to get things up and running. Finagling as in you might have to use an on-screen keyboard, or you might have to use a mouse, the touch screen to act as a mouse momentarily. Or no, it's unsupported, in which case generally it's not built for this. Although again, if you go and look on Proton DB, you can go and find the games that actually do work and just haven't been updated properly. And all of that just makes PC gaming so it's that final barrier of pain in the arseness that PC gamers had for such a long time. And I don't think it's quite there anymore. But it's just this thing of like, the Steam Deck is ultimately one skew of RAM, graphics card, all that sort of stuff. The settings there are people saying, okay, well, if you want to tune it for the Steam Deck, these are the settings that you should be using. And the whole thing just kind of works out of the box, meaning that your Steam library, or your potential Steam library, if you've not taken part in grabbing lots of humble bundles and game bundles and all that sort of getting Steam keys and stuff like that, I immediately, as soon as I powered it up, I was like, I have 1,200 games on here. This is bonkers, and there's a bunch of stuff on here that I don't want to play sitting at a desk, but I will totally play sitting on my couch.
Absolutely. I absolutely love my Steam Deck, and I was actually thinking today when I was playing it at work, where it's kind of ranking at the moment in terms of my sort of favourite consoles that I've owned, and certainly I'm not really sure where it is at the moment, but it's certainly one of my favourite console experiences of all time. Like, the breadth and depth of games that are available on it and that I've got access to and I can play on the go with little to no fuss at all is incredible. Like, for example, I've been playing Marvel's Midnight Suns, which is a game that came out this year. Well, Steam Deck, no problem. And then playing like Dave the Diver and Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, and Alba, A Big Adventure, and dipping and diving into all these like beautiful and wonderful experiences from like AAA to like really cheap but incredible indie games. And it just feeling absolutely at home on this console. And like, especially for a handheld, I don't think there's anything like that console experience of being able to jump from, you know, the high-end, intense, graphical and story-based experiences, but then being able to also enjoy, you know, catching fish for your evening sushi restaurant.
Exactly.
Is just it's just remarkable. And yeah, it's slightly big. Like, I saw some on Twitter the other day, or on my favorite Reddit community at the moment, which is r/Steam Deck, who said, who would have thought that the most popular handheld of our time would be bigger than the Game Gear? And you know, it's kind of like, I don't know how Valve have done it, but they've kind of managed to pull it off. Because I don't know how you felt, Pete, but when I first got the Steam Deck out of the box, I was like, oh, I'm not going to be taking this out of the house. It feels, you know, it feels like big, but it also feels delicate because it is so big. Like, you know, I'm going to drop this or I'm going to bang it up against something. It's not like a Switch where you feel like you can just throw it around and it'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
It's like the difference, I guess, between like a hardcover book and a paperback. Like, the Switch is a paperback. You just throw that, shove it in your bag. It doesn't matter. You leave it out in the rain. It'll be fine. Whereas a hardback book, you know, oh, I don't want to break the spine. You know, you kind of treat it a little bit differently.
I've been using it in different places. Obviously, I don't have a commute anymore, so I've been using it kind of in different places around the home. So I got a Steam Deck dock, which is very cool. It lets you, if you've not heard of this, Dan, it allows you to hook up an HDMI cable to the dock, which will charge your device, your Steam Deck itself, and it will then hook out to a television, much like a Switch, like a Switch dock does. And so I've hooked up an Xbox controller to it, and I've been playing games on the television. Then I've been able to take it upstairs, play with it, in bed. I've been able to hang out with it on the couch, all these different places, and lots of different places. But it's versatile. It's supremely versatile across all of these spaces. And I think the thing that people don't appreciate about the deck until you get it, and in fact about gaming on with Steam until you start properly using Steam, is it isn't just the library that you get with Steam. It isn't just the fact that there's, console exclusive isn't really a phrase on PC. It's like, everything's on a console or multiple consoles, but it's also definitely on PC, right? Like, or it's coming, right? Because it's not one or the other. It's just you do both. Most studios do both. The thing that really gets me is the ecosystem and how player focused it is. Much, much more so than the other devices that I have in my home. So the Switch, the PlayStation 4, previous consoles, those kinds of things. There's no my wish list, which I'm keeping an eye on, all the games that I'm potentially interested in, is a button press away. Like, it's just there, right? There's no faffing around with it. It's really clear when things are on sale. You get little notifications when things are on sale. It all just works within that. There's all the achievements, all the friends. The whole thing just ties in together really, really, really nicely in a way that I look at, and obviously it's deeply integrated quite deliberately with the store, right? Like, there's a reason that they're doing these devices. It's not out of the goodness of their own hearts, because they're like, cool, the first thing you are going to see is the store page, because we want you to spend money here. And that is perfectly valid, right?
I've spent more on Steam probably since I got my Steam Deck than I've ever spent on Steam. 100%.
And yet, when I fire up my PlayStation 4, which, let's not muck around, that's a device that's been around for a very long time now, I don't think I could tell you how I could reach my wish list on my PlayStation 4. I think I could tell you how I could reach my wish list on the PlayStation app, which I use on my phone, but that is not a good experience, right? I don't think I can tell you how I could wishlist games on the PlayStation Store, right? And again, like that seems like basic functionality because it is, and yet it's still, it's still not great on PlayStation. It's not ideal on Nintendo Switch, but on deck and on Steam in general, it's just like, like I say, it's a button press away and it's all there, and everything is there. The whole ecosystem, super player focused, super player driven. It's really quite something, and to have all of that in the convenient form factor of a console, it's great.
Do you think it's because obviously up until kind of the Steam Deck, Steam has been pretty much the kind of store platform. It's been a store-based platform that you get your PC games through. So like they obviously, when Steam came along, I mean, I'm not a PC gamer. Obviously, I've used Steam in the past. I have purchased PC games, but I'm not in any way a PC gamer. But my feeling is that Steam did very much change the game when it kind of came through, because it said, okay, you don't have to go to all these different places or go to shop and buy a big box full of discs and stuff like that, or anything here, there, and everywhere. Obviously, you could if you want to, but there was just this one place you could go to, and everything you wanted was going to be there. They kind of dallied a little bit in terms of some of the kind of the more platform-based stuff, where I think it was something like a cinema mode almost, where it would just like go full screen and completely change the kind of the user interface. And do you think that because for so long that's been their product has been selling you, putting everything exactly where you need it to be, that when they come to the point of let's put it in a console, they've kind of done so much dedicated work towards that it's an easier transfer? Whereas with not PlayStation, Xbox, all these things have been around for many, many years, but their sole focus hasn't been a kind of a store, which is what Steam has been. It's been a console. It's been everything else as well.
I think partly, yeah. I think very close to what I feel the reason is that they've done this, and that is because they've not had multiple generations of platforms to deal with. They've basically said, like, Steam has not remained the same, right? Like, it kicked off with, I think it was one of the Team Fortresses, like one of the Half-Lives.
Yeah.
And people really didn't like it to begin with. Like, they were like, how dare you, this digital gaming, what on earth is going on? And obviously that's completely changed. But from basically that point onwards, the thing that has been evolving are the innards of the PCs that people use, but but Steam itself hasn't been like, right, that was Steam 1 and all your games existed on that. This is now Steam 2, and now all of your games exist separately from that Steam 1 platform, right? So, like, I think the reason that they've done this is because they're basically a Formula One car, right? Like, they are finely tuned and finely tuned and finely tuned, whereas each time a new platform comes out for PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo, they have to kind of reinvent the wheel again, and it shows, basically, like, frankly. And I think that power of being essentially one continuous platform, I think that is really showing the power now when you go out to these more dedicated devices for PC players. I think you get all of that sort of stuff, and it comes with all those additional benefits of, hey, these will still work, all these games.
The other great powerful thing that they have, and this is the same thing that makes, a company like Amazon, where they make the Kindle and the Fire tablet such brilliant pieces of kit, the same sort of, a market presence who's then gone into a software or hardware-esque kind of world, is they have the data.
Yep.
They've been watching and paying attention to what people actually play on PC and what people actually read and what people actually do on tablets and interact with devices. And they've used that to make sure that something like a Steam Deck has so much cross-market appeal and serves the widest breadth of the audience, because they'll know the data on what people actually play on PC. And it's no accident, I don't think, that the number one game on Steam for like pretty much most of last year was Vampire Survivors. And Steam will know that. Steam will know that probably the majority of people are not playing, Marvel Midnight Suns, or they're not playing, Call of Duty Modern Warfare for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on their PC. They're probably not. They're probably playing some £10 indie game, the majority of the time. They know they don't have to make a powerful console because that's not what the majority of the audience is playing. So that data has probably driven more of the Steam Deck's genesis than anything else. And as a store holder, that's pretty much your most valuable asset.
Okay, so I'm not someone who plays kind of portably.
Sure.
I've never had an interest really in it. I think the only portable console I thought was the Vita, and I didn't play that very much. But I thought I might want one, and I'd got a bit of money in a time I was feeling flush, so I bought myself a Vita. That worked out well. So I'm not someone who kind of has that kind of requirement, and I don't play. I've got a PlayStation 5, so I do play console gaming. Very little mobile games. I'll play the odd mobile game, but not really anything like that. Is there anything in this for me? Because that portable thing isn't going to appeal to me. And is there a lot of stuff there that I'm just not going to get access to otherwise if I don't have a Steam Deck?
There's some stuff that you won't be able to get access to because they're just things that are never going to get remade or reported or whatever it is to a modern device, right? So if you want to go and play Benoit Sokal's Sinking City, Dan...
I was just going to go get that.
I know. If you want to play it on a couch, then you are going to have to play it on Steam in some way, right? Like, you're just not going to get access to it in another way. But I know that that's not really you. I think that the thing that this opens up to people who perhaps don't want to use it portably or don't have a need to use it portably is it puts... I think part of it is convenience, right? Games are cheaper on Steam. Like that's it, right? Like a huge part of that. Like if you're on a budget, genuinely, I think the best thing you can do is sign up for a Steam account, get as many free games as you possibly can, because there's always free games. r/free game finds, excellent subreddit of free Steam keys of things that are available. There's things like the Epic Games Store. There's things like GOG. They're always doing giveaways. All of those things can work on a Steam Deck. You can get them to work. And with the deck, you get a pretty decent gaming PC. It's definitely not high end. And for people who are part of, well into their PC gaming, it's not going to touch something with a 4080 inside of it or some mad setup, right? Like, it's just not going to touch those things. But it will give you complete access to that catalog, and it will run basically everything, including modern games at okay settings. You won't have to faff around tinkering with anything. And more importantly, and I think this should not be underestimated, if you get a deck dock, you are putting a PC into your living room. So the Steam Deck will let you go into desktop mode, which is basically just Linux, right? And Linux has come, again, the bad old days of Linux, not great. It was fine, but very ropey, not particularly useful to use. You needed to kind of know your way around it to actually use it. Now, it basically, spoilers, it looks like a Mac. Like when you're using it, it looks like a weird cross between a Windows machine and a Mac OS. It's really easy to use, really friendly. It's got Steam Deck comes with a bunch of pre-installer things that will basically say, hey, what sort of stuff do you want? You type in a search and it will show you, here's everything you can download that meets this demand. I've got Zoom, for example, working on my Steam Deck, and it is now set up in my living room. The dock is permanently connected, and a webcam is sat on top of my television, and I can just have a video call from the comfort of my couch. I can take a whacking great memory card, chuck it into the device, and if I want, it's a PC. I can use it to play all my music, all my videos, all my emulated games that I totally don't do. I can use it to... it's a PC. Like it can do everything a PC can do, but it's not a massive bloody great big tower sitting in your living room looking really ugly. It's a really lovely little form factor and device that can sit there. And like I say, you've got access to all this stuff now. Like it's really lovely. It's a really, really cool experience, and it definitely brings with it the value of being a PC as well as being the value of a console. I've been playing Alba, but not on Steam Deck.
Yeah.
You've been playing it on Steam Deck, right, Sam?
I did play it on the Steam Deck. And boy, that makes the Steam Deck chug for some weird bonkers reason.
Yeah.
Like, you turn on Alba and suddenly the fan's like...
Yeah. Punting out that beautiful smell from the fans. So yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if you've heard of this one, Dan.
I haven't. No, I genuinely don't know what this is.
So Monument Valley.
Vague. Not played it, but I roughly know what it is.
Okay, so there's a company called ustwo, and they are these mobile indie darlings, and they made Monument Valley 2. They made a couple of other games as well. They're weirdly, I don't think they're actually a games outfit. I think they're actually more of an agency, but they've been more into games recently. And Monument Valley, brilliant game. Monument Valley 2, not quite as brilliant game, but very, very good. And Alba was their next big one, and it was, I believe, an Apple Arcade exclusive for the longest time. It's a photography game, kind of, and the general plot is that you are a young child and you have a camera, and it's your job to camera phone, I suppose, yeah, to go around this island and take photos with your camera. And mostly you'll be taking pictures of wildlife, but there's also a couple of other bits and pieces where you'll be taking photos of corruption and criminal activities.
So like, you kind of missed a little bit out of the story.
Okay, what's the other part of the story?
Well, the part of the story is you go and visit this island where your grandparents live.
Yeah.
And it's like a beautiful, idyllic Mediterranean island, unspoiled. And there's a nature reserve on it, and there's been this fire. And the town have never restored the nature reserve to its former glory. And then whilst you're on the island visiting your grandparents, the mayor turns up, and he's there with his sunglasses on, jumper tied up over his shoulders. And he says, I just met this lovely chap who's there in a sharp business suit, who's going to develop a hotel on the island and bring loads of tourism and bring loads of money into the island. It just so happens the hotel's going to be built on the nature reserve.
Yeah.
So what you're essentially trying to do in a roundabout way is photograph the breadth and the depth of the ecological life on this island in kind of a not so subtle way to try and stop this development being built.
Yeah, it's like Captain Planet, except there's only one of you, basically, right? Yeah. It's got this kind of ecological lilt to the whole thing, and it's lovely, and it's a bit chintzy, and it's a bit indie video game, but it works. It's a simple setup. It's a simple MacGuffin, essentially, to give you essentially a camera and to go around taking photos of nature, and to do so in a beautiful landscape. Like, it is
absolutely,
really quite
stunning.
beautiful. The visual style of it is kind of flat shaded. Really should not be taxing the deck as much as perhaps it does. But I think it's a Unity game, and I think Unity sometimes can be a little bit, what's the nice way of saying unperformant? Yeah, basically it can be a bit of a memory hog at times.
Poorly optimized.
Yeah, there you go. Also, it does wear its Apple Arcade-ness on its sleeves, I would say. So, for example, the UI.
So is this where you've been playing it on Apple Arcade?
No, I've been playing it on PlayStation 4.
Okay.
So it got a proper console PC port after Apple Arcade. It was an Apple Arcade exclusive, basically, and for various boring business deal reasons, basically Apple give you a load of money to make a game for their thing, and then afterwards they say, "Oh, put it on whatever you want afterwards." And that's what seems to be what ustwo did. So the UI, for example, is fine, but you can tell that the original thinking behind it was you're going to have a touchscreen. It's not bad by any means. It's obvious that's where they were coming from with it. The gameplay itself as well is definitely in that ustwo tradition of it looks more complicated than it actually is, and when you get into it, it's very straightforward. I would say it's even simple kinds of gameplay. So you don't have to properly frame images of the animals particularly. So if and I know, Dan, this is one of your favorite games, but Hakuna Matata on the PlayStation 3, If you're
What a
familiar with
wonderful
that,
phrase.
we're all familiar with it.
Every
What's it
night I
called?
play that.
Yeah, I know. You're always like, when will they do a remake of Africa? So it's not nearly as complicated as that, right? You do not have to frame things properly. It's not like, it's a phone camera. It's all automatic, right? So you don't have to worry about depth of vision, depth of field, ISO. You don't have to worry about like exposure times. You don't have to worry about any of that sort of stuff. It's just point, shoot, done. And you're filling up a catalogue of animals that exist on this island. And it's lovely. It's got that dopamine hit of tick, tick, tick of you just filling up this list of animals. And the sound design is wonderful, like genuinely brilliant. I don't think it gets enough praise for it. Like,
no,
you can go and look at all of the animals in your little Birdpedia and press a little button and it will make the sound of the cuckoo or the cow or the goat or whatever it is, that particular species, how that animal sounds, it will be in there. And you can wander around the environment, not know that there is a specific creature in that area, but you'll be able to hear it. Like, you'll be able to hear rock doves and go, okay, yep, cool, it's to this mobile game. Like, there's something actually here. But it's not so weighty that it's off-putting. Like, you don't have to worry about being a simulational level photographer, right? You don't have to be super hot on that kind of side of things. And it's quite forgiving in a lot of ways as well, of it points you in the right direction a lot of the time. It holds your hand as much as you need it to. It's a lovely little game.
I'll be honest with you. We've been doing this podcast for 180 episodes, and we have talked about hundreds of games. A majority of the time, when we talk about different video games and stuff, I sit there and I think, you know what, that does sound like a great game. I'm never going to play it. I don't have the time. I don't have for whatever reason, I'm never going to play it. Okay. I think I'm probably going to buy this game. And the reason being is I now have a 5-year-old and he's starting to enjoy video games. And currently it's quite difficult to find video games which suit a 5-year-old because of the kind of how dexterous they are and their ability, kind of hand-eye coordination, all that stuff. Quite difficult. So he's been playing some of the Paw Patrol games, which are fantastic for that and teaching the core basics of kind of how to hold a controller, how to maneuver kind of on screen. He's been playing a Peppa Pig game, which is a bit young for him, but again, it's fantastic about just introducing those concepts of movement and pressing buttons. And I've been trying to like look for things, but there's kind of a bit of a jump up to kind of, and he's kind of in the middle there. So you look at something like Mario. Mario is a simple game, but it's quite taxing to try and get it done. And so kind of as you talk about this, and as you've done that, I've just been having a look at some of the kind of the images and stuff as well. So it's absolutely kind of artwork, visual style, like absolutely in that sweet spot. By the sounds of it, the controls and everything don't sound too complex, so it should be quite easy to pick up. I mean, what I tend to use, and I've talked about this before, is the website Taming Gaming, which is like a family game video game database. And what's one of the best things they do, and I've just pulled this actually up here, is they give you like a content rating, which is obviously your kind of your PEGI ratings. That's 3 for Alba, but it also gives kind of a skill level that they assess, like what age is good enough. And for this, it's given a skill level of 5 and up. As like this, we feel that a 5-year-old should have enough kind of skill level. They might not find it easy, but they should have that skill level to kind of pick that up and be able to play it. And obviously my little boy, he'll play on kind of tablets and stuff like that, but he does play with the PlayStation 5 controller. And I am kind of, for his next birthday, looking at getting a Switch because there are more options on there for his kind of games that he will be able to play. And obviously the controllers are a bit smaller, so it's a bit easier for him. But this sounds like and looks like a really, really lovely option for him to play because he's kind of rinsed the likes of the Paw Patrol and the Peppa Pig games within an inch of its life. He's nearly platinumed them. That there's everything he can possibly do on it. He's done. So I'm kind of looking for something a bit further along.
This is gonna absolutely fill that niche. And when I say it's simple gameplay, it's simple for us, right? Like, but it's not.
Yeah, because we're big proper gamer boys.
Yeah, we're big boys. But like,
I was playing it with my Gunners on Mountain Dew.
Yeah,
Doritos,
drinking Prime.
Yeah, I only just found out what Prime is, and I don't want to live anymore. So, it is all of those things. It's straightforward. It's simple. It's good looking, and it will allow you. It isn't super dexterous. Right? It doesn't require any of that sort of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff in there. Lots of check boxes. It's very straightforward. I think the thing that I like about it as well is, and maybe this is something you'd be interested in as well. It does have this underlying environmental theme, which for somebody like us is like, obviously, right? Like, it's very like preaching to the converted. It's not particularly complex in the way that it deals with its issues. There are baddies, they are capitalists, and that's pretty much about as deep as it goes. But I think that will actually fly quite well with younger minds, because it will allow you to provoke a conversation, I think. So, for example, I can totally imagine a situation in which, you go and you find some lovely birds and some lovely, woodland critters and stuff like that. And, you find a sick squirrel, right? And they're not like, it's not like Resident Evil. It's not like grim sort of, there's
foaming
like
at the mouth.
Foaming at the mouth and trying to attack everything. It's like little
Alba takes a drastic turn.
It's like a little, swirling, I feel a bit poorly symbol. And I think it can start conversations of like, oh, you rescued that squirrel, you gave it some medicine. Why do you think it was poorly? Like, what is it and you can totally see how conversations might come out of that stuff. And about the importance of nature and the importance of, also, I think that the most difficult subject it broaches is the balance between the well-being of the society and the well-being of the nature in which the society resides.
Because it's clear that this town needs a bit of a shot in the arm.
Oh yeah, like I'd be pulling my teeth out if I lived on that island.
I mean, I think I found whilst I was playing the game the number one reason why the economy was shot was because for some reason they were printing a newspaper probably once every hour.
Yeah, I was like talk about conservation. But yeah, like it's that is about as complex as it gets, but that is an interesting conversation to have, and it's in the framework of a video game, which I think is pretty impressive. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time with it, and it was definitely a very, like I say, palate cleanser. Definitely for me, I wanted something more substantial. I don't think I quite I'm still on the lookout for a really good photography game, like a really good one, but I think this is a serviceable one in a serviceable photography game in the wider context of a very pleasant, very enjoyable, high quality title.
I got a massive nostalgic hit from it, and I think one of the reasons for that was the soundscape for me was very reminiscent of, I didn't grow up in the Mediterranean, but for me, spending a lot of summers with my grandparents, where I always associate the sound of wood pigeons with like summers in England, and especially like when the days are a lot longer in the summer, like being outside in the summer and hearing like, wood pigeons just going at it all the time. And that is a sound that's quite dominant in Alba. And the other fact of the matter is that if you want to, days can literally last forever. Like you can just be out taking photographs of stuff until you decide to go back to your grandparents' house and have some dinner. And for me, that was another great sort of nostalgic hit for what it feels like to be at that age where you have that freedom of being able to go out and explore and have the trust of your family that that you're going to be safe and you can take care of yourself. But you still feel a little bit naughty going into all these places. Like there's an abandoned work site, and you feel a little bit like, oh, I know I shouldn't be here, but I'm just going to go these steps and have a look over the island from this abandoned like house that's not quite been finished building yet, or I'm going to walk into this person's farm because I really need to try and get some shots of a chicken. And it had that magnificent feeling of being a young child on a summer holiday, feeling like the days are going to last forever, but yet feeling like you're having a very, very personal and thrilling adventure. Have you guys ever played Boy/Girl?
Is that a board game or is that a video game?
It's what would you call it? Would you call it a traditional game, a folk game? It is sometimes called
it's just
Town
like
Country River.
Like one that's passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah, Town Country River, sometimes called.
What happens in that game? Because it might be one of the things where like everyone has a different name for it.
Probably, yeah. So Boy/Girl is what I used to play, and you write down. Everyone gets a piece of paper, and you write boy, girl, city, hobby, job, word, or like adjective or something like that. And then you pick a letter at random, and then as quickly as possible, you've got to find a boy that begins with that letter, a girl that begins with that letter, a city that begins with that letter, and so on and so on and so on. And then you basically get points if you get something correct, but you also get more points if you get something that's unique.
Yeah.
You ever played that game?
I think so. I recognise some of the rules. I probably have played a variant of it in my youth.
Yeah. I know that we've spoken actually quite recently about like card games codifying different like sort of folk games. I know we spoke about Head and Hungry Monkey. Yeah, the Hungry Monkey being like a game that we gave away on our Instagram channel, a game that kind of codified a sort of a very traditional playing card game. And Cracklist is a game that in a way blends Uno with a very traditional word game, very traditional sort of family word game. And I have to say, it is, for the moment that you open the box of Cracklist, it is one of the most adorable experiences that you'll have. I'm going to share my screen with you here because I need to show you the image that pops up when you open up the box of Cracklist. Mm-hmm. When you open up this box, you're greeted by this image.
Okay. This is a picture of two lovely individuals. A chap with white hair and glasses, a lady with very piercing, striking blue eyes, and then some cards that just say, hello.
But don't they look adorable?
They do look adorable.
You can't deny that.
You can't deny that. So when you open up Cracklist for the first time, this is the image that greets you. And this is Pierre and his daughter, Charlotte. And they designed Cracklist. It turns out that their whole family, well, Pierre is kind of the lead sort of designer, but they have a track history of taking games that they've always played as a family and turning them into board games. And Cracklist is one of those. It's that blending of Boy Girl or Town Country River with mechanics from Uno. So what you do is you have all these cards in the deck. Most of them have got a letter from the alphabet on it. You hand them out to everyone who's playing around the table, and then someone picks a category from the crack list. So you've got two decks. You've got one deck, which is all the letters and power cards, and you've got another deck, which is the crack list, which has different categories on them. And you pick categories. There's categories on the card that range between easy, medium, and hard. And so you pick a category, and it could be something like types of soup or party food or like, one of the easy ones. And this is why it's a really great game to play with kids, is something like something I would like for Christmas. It can be something that's very, very subjective, and therefore the answer can never really be incorrect. And you basically go around the table once you pick the category, putting a card down, then saying a thing that matches the letter on your card that matches that category. And you have about 20 seconds to complete that, to pick a letter from your hand and put it down in front of you. If it's correct and everyone deems it to be correct, you go on to the next player. And it's the first player to lose all their hands of cards. Now, I always love a game like this where it feels like it really has been born from hours and hours of play with a family. And I've played this with a group of people the same age, and I've also played it with families with age ranges from like 10 up to like 50, 60. And it is such a wonderful experience because it's got just enough flex in the design that means it's challenging for adults, but it's also challenging for kids, but it's not frustrating for either of those groups of people. Where it is frustrating, where you do bash your head against it, it's frustrating for everyone. Everyone shares in that same feeling of, I just can't think of a thing, I can't think of a thing, and then time runs out, and then it's just like, you all share in that delight, or you all know that someone's making something up and you're calling that person out and sharing in that experience as a group and as a family. And it also made me feel like, and I don't know if this is kind of being quite hyperbolic, But it also kind of made me feel like the feeling that we had when we created What's Better Than a Hot Tub.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, is it time that we took the next step and we make a physical game out of this thing?
Because it has that feeling of something very homegrown, like something, I could have made this, like something that you would have played with, your grandparents, or you would have played when you were younger, and now you're playing when you were older.
It has that feel of the game that kind of has been passed on to different. You've played it at a party,
yes,
because someone else played it at a party, because someone else played it at a party, and it's changed and it's evolved throughout all the plays, and then you've done it on scraps of paper, and it's just formalizing the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a delight to play, and the Uno mechanics bring in a bit of a extra frisson to it, and those are things that if you played Uno, you'll be very familiar with. So instead of playing a card that's got a letter on it, you can play a stop card, which means someone has to skip their go, or you can reverse the direction that the game is going. You can make people pick up additional cards, but that's only if you play a letter which is deemed not that common or a bit more difficult to find a answer for. So if you play like a Z and you're able to say something in the category that starts with a Z, you can make someone around the table pick up 3 cards, for example. So there is a lot more incentive to kind of go for, difficult letters in order to make, other people around the table pick up more cards and not finish. And that's, again, one of those things that comes from it feeling like such a genuine little family experience, because the crack lists themselves, because they're set up in easy, medium and hard, it's very easy when someone plays a crack list card to then change a category and make it more difficult for the adults around the table, or for the adults to make it a bit easier for all the children around the table for that round. It's really easy for a child to play a card that makes people pick up and then just focus on adults to make them pick up all the cards in turn, and to kind of punish them for just being older, in a sense, which is kind of what happened in our game. But yeah, crack list is a really, really nice set of cards, and I think it's one of those unique card experiences that is better when played with a family, when played with a group of players of different ages and experiences, because that's where the fun really, really comes out of it. But another good family game I've been playing is a game called Sweet and Spicy. Now, Chris isn't here, but he has informed me that back in January of 2021, over 2 years ago, the same episode we talked about Tenet, we spoke about a game called Spicy. And Spicy is a game which is a bit like Liar's Uno. And Spicy was a game, I don't know if you guys remember it, where you have this wonderful set of artwork, and the idea is, again, to be the first person to try and get rid of all your cards. And what you're doing is you're putting cards face down on a pile, and you're saying a number and a spice. And that spice in the original Spicy was like wasabi, chili, or pepper. And the number had to be one higher than the previous number played. But you could lie about the number or the spice that you were playing that card on. And then everyone else around the table either carries on and starts putting down cards, or they call you out and they say that you're lying, but they have to say what you're lying about. Are you lying about the number, or are you lying about the spice? Is the number sequential, or does the spice match? What are you lying about? And then game kind of goes on from there. And it's an absolute wonderful little bluffing card game. But HeidelBÄR Games have released a family-friendly version of Spicy called Sweet and Spicy, where they've kind of softened down a bit of the artwork. So instead of tigers, now you play as little fluffy kittens, and the spices, pepper's still there, but it's not a chili pepper. It's just it's pepper as in the condiment, and It's not wasabi anymore. It's a lemon, and other than that, the rules are kind of similar. The only other thing that they've changed is that everyone basically starts off with a wild card, which means that they can put it down at any time, say whatever they want, and it's completely legal. With the idea being that younger players have a kind of leg up within the game. And there's not much to say about it other than that. If you go back to episode 119 and listen to the wonderful things that we said about Spicy, everything is the same here, but the presentation and the integration of it is just a bit nicer when it comes to families.
So what, I mean, going all the way back to 119, I barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning, so I don't actually remember that. What was it that about kind of the original that wasn't family friendly?
I think...
Was it kind of lewd pictures of tigers and whatnot?
No, I think the artwork wasn't necessarily scary in any way. It was probably a bit more abstract, probably a bit more, how best to describe it, where Sweet and Spicy feels a bit more Pixar, the original Spicy probably feels a bit more like, I don't know if you've seen the film Wolf Walkers, or a bit more like Princess Mononoke. Like, it just feels a bit more adult,
a bit more edgy
in a way,
a bit more edgy type thing.
Yeah, it's a bit, it's definitely got an edge to it, which I don't necessarily, it's not going to, I don't think it's going to scare a child or give a child nightmares. But if you were to present one game in front of a child and the other, I can probably take a good guess at which one they're going to prefer in terms of just looking at it on face value. And then, as I said, the other thing in terms of the tweaks that they've given the rules, they've just made it a little bit more balanced for a family experience, which I think is kind of one of those things which is kind of precious these days, where we don't usually get a board game company which is really thinking about, what can we do to make this a bit more of a nicer entry point to players who are younger, or to players who want a bit more of a casual experience. Like, it's kind of I guess the reason I bring it to the podcast is, yes, it's nice and both games are kind of valid and you'll kind of pick your own one for kind of what you want to do, but I also kind of want to celebrate the publisher HeidelBÄR for kind of going in this direction and realizing that there is a value to having something which caters for a different audience but provides a similar experience and doesn't gatekeep people from that.
I think it's just the same kind of thing as I talked earlier about trying to find video games for kind of young children, understanding that you can't just say, oh, they'll just play that one, they'll just get used to it. Like, having that, creating an entry is actually really important.
Yes.
And creating something that a younger child can engage with and find it easier to kind of get on board with is really important in terms of their development and in terms of their kind of the evolution of their kind of love of games, whether it's board games, card games, video games, whatever it is. And I think, as you say, that is actually a really important thing that I think some people would look at it as like, oh, they've just put a slightly cutesier artwork on it and sold it again to make money. I don't think, as you say, I don't think that's what it is. It is a case of, let's actually see how can we adapt the game to meet an audience that isn't always particularly well served.
Another brief update on the last episode. I'm just having to rejig my Mission Impossible ranking. Nothing's changed at the bottom. That's still the same. Mission Impossible 2, dead last. Sorry, John Woo. But now at the top, and I feel like I'm just going to have to commit to this, I'm going to have to say that my number 3 spot is no longer Rogue Nation, but it is now Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
I did actually watch Fallout again because I was going to go and see Dead Reckoning. I haven't been able to actually, but I was going to go and see it, so I wanted to watch Fallout again. And it is good.
It's such a good film.
It is good. I'm of the opinion that McHugh wouldn't be the director if he said no to Tom Cruise. I get the feeling that he's the director that says yes to Tom Cruise the most. When Tom Cruise comes up with the most ridiculous things he wants to do, every other director with a sensible mind would say no, that's insane. Whereas he kind of goes, yeah, let's do it.
I just don't know how you make a film in the way that Christopher McQuarrie does, because he says, so for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Tom Cruise came up to Christopher McQuarrie and went, I want to ride a motorbike off a mountain. And Christopher McQuarrie went, I want to crash a train. And they were like, brilliant, we'll just make a story fit. And that's it. Like, that was their starting point. And then it was kind of like, we'll just make a film around where we eventually want to kind of get to. And in terms of scope and actually attacking a project, it's just a crazy way of, it's a very non-traditional way of trying to actually execute a plan, right? Because there's literally nothing to it. Before those 2 points, they're not really thinking about the story and the characters and where they actually need to be. They're kind of just let's just do these things and see where we get. And like, I've heard interviews with some of the cast members where they literally were asked to film scenes like 6 times and do different readings of the lines 6 times so that the director and Tom Cruise could find the film in the edit.
So this is very reminiscent of video game narrative creation. so it one of the things that, and again, it's not all video games do this. In fact, a lot of them don't now. But the traditional way that you used to do it is you would say, right, we got all these events, we got these backs, we got all this like these characters and these settings that we want to do. These action points between all of these things, build the game, layer a story over the top of it to try and make sense of it, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like that. It sounds like that approach to narrative, where the focus is perhaps not on storytelling, and therefore it takes second fiddle, which is fine. Like, I'm totally okay with that as an idea. Like, if what you're going to do is make a movie about doing silly things, that totally makes sense, right? Like, they didn't come up with a big narrative for Jackass because they were like, well, we'll edit this whole thing together and it'll tell a story of some kind, right? It's fine. But yeah, a lot of video games take that approach too. And I know a lot of writers find that really frustrating because they wanted to be very like fiction first. But also, ultimately, I think a lot of creatives have to kind of think, is like your thing might have story, but is story the most important thing about it? Which I think in cinema is always seen as the default of like, yeah, it's the most important thing. And it's like, is it? Like, maybe it's not.
I think this is where kind of the Mission Impossible films do kind of struggle a bit with their identity, because it's kind of like in this 2-hour, 10-minute or 15-minute film, like it is very much concerned with story and character. And, if it wanted to be all about the bombast, it would just be a 90-minute flick with a bit of story in between, and then let's just cut to the chase and actually do what everyone's come here to see. Yeah. So I guess you could say with that approach, the opposite is true. Where some writers might find it quite restrictive, some might find it quite liberating in terms of, right, I know where I need to get. Mm-hmm. How can I make the most compelling tale to actually get to where I need to be? And I think one of the best things that Dead Reckoning does really well is actually create a really ominous and compelling villain who is omnipotent, who you don't know who they are, but yet you're scared of them. They can be anywhere and nowhere baby, and they can speak through people, and they can attack anyone at any time. And it's remarkable how, in terms of how this film got made, that they actually make a villain so adept and interesting and not seem too bombastic, but yet enough to drive the plot forward in a reasonably sensible way. So by the time you get to the big stunts at the end, you don't feel like it was a big reach. You kind of feel like there was a natural progression to get there. Like, in terms of, as I said, my ranking, it's not up there only for the fact that, boy, is it doing a lot of setting up for the sequel. It is doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of getting us there for the sequel. And Chris and I went to go and see it, and the feeling that we were left with was, and this is a bit similar to Across the Spider-Verse, is that feeling of, what are they holding back? Yeah. What are they leaving behind, and what are they setting up in order to make the payoff for the sequel? And a bit like Across the Spider-Verse, well, exactly like this Across the Spider-Verse, I got to the end of the 2-hour plus runtime. I didn't want it to end. I was just like, right, I'm ready for the sequel right now. Give me the sequel now. I'll watch it. Like, I was there. Like, it was breathless and it was exhilarating and like seat crunchingly tense at the end. But I was just ready for the next hit that the film gives me. Like, it is exceptionally good. But my only reservation is that it often felt like, from the score upwards, like they were really holding back in terms of what they're going to do now for the next one.
I think for me, it's the Macquarie films. Unless I just watched them, they all kind of flow together. It's less so much with the first three, mainly because you've got three completely different directors with 3 completely different visual styles. And then you move on to Chris Macquarie, who again is different, but then he has kind of 3 all the same. So like, I forget like which film has which cutscene, which film has which set piece. I tend to know the differently depending on how long Tom Cruise's hair is. Like, I think there's a scene in like a Russian jail, which I think is Ghost Protocol, because that's where he has long hair. And I think then it's Rogue Nation. I think he has shorter hair. And then, yeah, that's kind of, they all kind of blend together, those ones. Whereas I can kind of point out 1, 2, and 3. Not that they're vastly better or anything like that, but just purely because, like, that first one looks very different to number 2, which is a John Woo film. And then it's a kind of a more of a high-tech spy thriller in the third one, and then it moves on to kind of the big action sequences when you got kind of Chris McQuarrie on board. But that's always my show. I like them. I'm a big fan of them, but they kind of all blend together for me.
But that's a good sign, isn't it? Right?
Not necessarily.
That shows that they've created a strong, cohesive world.
There's a big difference between a strong, cohesive world and things that all just merge in together.
Yeah, I remember a group of big set pieces. I don't necessarily remember how they fit into the overarching story.
Yeah, you wouldn't take all of the different kinds of 10x squash, mix and match them all together, and say what a compelling, cohesive whole. You would go, this tastes awful.
I don't know. In the wake of Barbie's dominance at the box office, obviously we're going to have lots more films from Mattel. I mean, there's going to be a Barney
the dinosaur
film.
Is that Barney the dinosaur?
Hot Barney the Dinosaur, featuring Daniel Kaluuya. Incredible Oscar nominated.
I mean, it's the obvious choice.
Nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah,
obvious choice. Hot Wheels, Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Uno, the movie. So my question to you guys is, what is the childhood toy that you'd like to be made into a movie?
Brave Star.
What?
Brave Star.
Grave Star.
Brave. Brave. Brave Star.
Right. Let's go. Let's have a look at this. Brave Star. American. So not a toy, an animated series.
Oh, it was during that beautiful era where we watched adverts as children masquerading as entertainment.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Go
on. So yes, it was a space western animation that was, Saturday morning cartoon sort of thing. But really, it was about selling action figures. And actually, funnily enough, Mattel owns it. It basically had, I think it was on like Mars or something, or some planet, and basically the planet was called New Texas. And
yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page for it now.
And basically, it was like Wild West stories, except aliens.
Okay, so New Texas, a planetary system orbiting 3 suns. Much of the food and water supply is imported. I mean, the detail that this Wikipedia article is going into for a children's cartoon is incredible. Well, the majority of the land is desert or prairie, but there is one wetland area, which is the home of ape cats.
Yep. So he had a horse called 3030, which was he was like sentient, but he still rode on it.
Yeah.
He still got ridden around on.
His chief deputy.
Yeah. So he's his deputy, but also a horse that he rides on.
And has a weapon called Sarah Jane.
Yeah. And it was like filled with like cool phrases and words and like neat things in there that as a kid I was like, wow, that's really cool. And the toys were like a bit plasticky and gross and grim, but it was also like they were also really fun. Like one of the characters had this like whip that was made of this horrible sticky stuff that probably gave us all terrible things that will only come out in our 80s and 90s. But like honestly, like it was great. And there were lots of like bank robberies, and like it was fun. It was like great. It was like a pulpy western kind of a thing, but in space. It was amazing.
I think mine is another Mattel one, and it'd be Dino Riders.
Dino Riders.
I don't think I ever had Dino Riders.
Do you guys not?
I don't know that one.
Do you never remember Dino?
Let me just quickly have a look
Dino
and just
Riders.
double check. No, I remember this one. Yep. Top quality.
So Dino Riders was I'm not gonna look at Wikipedia for this. So I don't know if someone wants to double check my memory. I think it was something like a group of scientists or something like that get sent back in time, And their response to that is to then just strap lots of lasers to dinosaurs and have lots of fights with them. So all these poor dinosaurs just have like massive, like sort of just big munitions factories strapped to their backs and people like riding them. It was a crazy series, and the toys are excellent. But yeah, it was really that I can see that movie being made.
Oh yeah.
See, I was trying to think, did I have any toys that weren't kind of TV shows or something like that? And I think most of the toys that I had did come from TV shows. I think the one I go for is Bucky O'Hare.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, if I remember rightly, like I think they only made like 10 or so episodes, something like that. So they made very, very few episodes. But I distinctly remember like years later going back and seeing some of it and realizing it's one of those things where like it's actually quite adult in terms of like it's not meant to be, it's for kids, but what they're actually talking about, like, oh no, you're talking about drugs, you're absolutely talking about, like, I think there's like an episode where like the robot has been drugged or something, and he's like, oh, he's smacked off his cranium, and you're like, oh, okay. There's a very thin veil of disguise to this.
Yeah. It started off life, Bucky O'Hare, as a comic book series. So kind of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the ones that I love are from the animated TV series, but like the original comics are actually quite dark and brutal in some ways. I think Bucky O'Hare was part of that big thing during the 70s and early 80s.
I think there was a lot of kind of comic book to there. There's like Biker Mikes from Mars and stuff like that as well. That was like more of a longer running thing. Than Bucky. I assumed it had kind of gone for longer, but I think it was really, really short run. Yeah.
If someone wouldn't mind making King Arthur and the Knights of Justice into a movie, that would be my childhood.
Oh my God.
If you've got an idea for something from your childhood that you'd like to be turned into a cash cow for a rich white man, then please send us an email. stayinginpod@gmail.com. Or you can talk, you right witch men. You can let us know on X, whatever on earth it's called these days, @stayinginpod on Instagram and Facebook as well. They've just put up their prices, but if you're still on Spotify, then you can hear some of our curated pages where we've put together soundtracks.
We'll see if we can get Chris to put some of the theme tunes to some of the TV shows we just talked about.
Oh yeah. You need to put Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars on there, for goodness. What an absolutely slamming tune.
Hopefully he'll put something on from Alba as well, because that soundtrack is absolutely that's a banger. So if you want some accompaniment to your life, then we've got 3 different soundtracks that we put together, all taking inspiration from the games and the movies that we talk about, and they're all available on Spotify. It's a nuisance to get to. The best place to do is just to follow the links through our show notes. Talking about curation, we've talked a lot about Steam. So if you're on the Steam store, if you're lucky enough to have a Steam Deck, then why not check out our page, our curation page on Steam, where we list all the video games to talk about, links back to the episodes that we talked about them. So if you're looking for something new to try out, it's a great place to explore. And we have the same sort of thing on BGG, which is Board Game Geek, which is the same thing as the Steam curation pages, but board games. And that's it.
All right then.